I mean, I played the one in 2002, and then it wasn't worth it because when you live in Costa Rica, I mean, going to Greece, it's not easy, you know.
I think I
Back
played
then,
20.
you played
No
20.
way. You
yeah.
played 20?
20
Between
youth?
European and World Youth, yeah.
Oh,
Wow, that's
10
crazy.
years.
yeah.
No, I
10
played.
years.
I played two if you want to count it that way, because I did play the Pan American Youth
Yeah.
in 1998. I won that one, and then I played World Youth in 2002, and that was it. Because people don't realize, but this World Youth Championship, even though it's meaningful, it's not that meaningful. It's great that you're a world champion. It helps with sponsorship and stuff, but not because you're world champion is it under 16 or 14 or 12 or whatever. Is it an absolute indication that you will be a top player? I mean,
Yeah, we see that. Like, I don't think Magnus ever won a World Youth
Youth,
Championship. I know there's like a famous one where he was playing with Jan in the same tournament.
that
and
was
Draken.
that was 2002. I was there. We were there.
We were both playing that one. It was like near Crete, right?
Yes.
And did Jan win that?
I want to say that Jan won.
Or maybe it was on Draken.
I think it was one of them. Jan won.
Yeah.
I think Jan won that one, but I might be incorrect. MVL was also playing. I think Dingliran was playing. It was kind of a sick tournament.
I think Matlakov played in that one at my age group. Nepo won that one.
It must have been.
Nepo
Yeah.
won as well.
yeah.
That's what I want to say.
Nepo,
yeah.
I think Howell was also in that one. Magnus was definitely in that one.
Maybe
It was just
Maxime
a
as well.
wild-
Maxime was there.
Because 1990 is like of all eras or even years in chess, like 1990 is by far the strongest. Going
So
back
strong.
as far back as you can in history. Or
It's
or-
funny how it works like that, right? Because if you think about certain years, it's like a crop of wine. Sometimes they're really good, and sometimes, I mean, we kind of got spoiled.
How's your year?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Absolutely. I mean, if you compare to like 90 or 91 compared to 88, 88 we have like some decent players, like, but nobody outstanding. Like, I think right now Mamedov is our highest rated 1988.
Ralph Mamedov from Azerbaijan.
Yeah, and he was 2700 at some point, so not too bad, but we haven't had like a 2750.
But if you go 1 year back, then you have Nakamura in 1987.
We're sandwiched. We're sandwiched between 87, which is really strong, and then 89, 90. That's super strong.
Who was born in 1989?
I think. Who was?
I
born?
can't think of anyone. 1990 is just
90
crazy.
is full, right?
Then it's
So-
88, 89. That was not so great.
Yeah,
maybe
ni-
89, yeah.
89, I can't think of anyone.
91.
90, 91, yeah. Of
Oh,
course.
okay. Another disaster. Yeah.
You have
Great year.
Lequang Liam in 91.
Yeah, actually,
Kwang, yeah.
Le Quang, I think,
He was the strongest.
is Shanklin 91 as well, or is he 92?
I think Sam is also 1991.
Yeah. So you see
91
this.
or 92,
You see a
yeah.
lot of these world youths, and you can see that there's interesting crop coming up, and you see
Yeah.
the people that are going to be strong. But it didn't necessarily mean that going to these tournaments, even with a guarantee that you win it, was worth it because nobody was paying my tickets. Like for example, once my GBM.
So you weren't getting any sponsorships for that one.
Yeah, once my GBM sponsorship ended for other reasons, nobody was paying me to go to this World Youth. Like, I paid my tickets to the Olympiad because I wanted to play a good tournament. But when you think about it, that's crazy, right? Like, how can your Olympic committee not organize the team, or how can your federation but people don't realize that most chess players experience, not like the elite, but most chess players experience is like this. Your federation is not very good. It doesn't have any money. Sending people to the Olympiad will bankrupt them. And you're suddenly like, well, I want to go, but that means like going out, giving simuls, finding the money, finding the tickets. I remember going to the Calvial Olympiad in 2004, and the morning of the first round, not knowing if we had a full team. Like, we were just not 100% sure that we had 4 people.
I've seen this with like various teams because usually chess federations don't have so much money, or sometimes the money just goes to certain places that it shouldn't. And like I remember once Mexico was playing in 2016 Olympiad. This
That's
this
right.
got to like became a famous story because Maurice was coaching the Ivory Coast. Maurice Ashley, right?
Yes.
And they were playing the Ivory Coast, and normally Mexico against Ivory Coast is not much of a competition, right?
No.
But within like the first, I don't know how many minutes, Ivory Coast was up 2-0 because Mexico's team hadn't made it yet. And I think only 2 of their boards made it to that match.
Yeah, I think Mexico is one of those clear examples of a federation that is gotten better. But if we talk about the Federation of Mexico like 6-7 years ago, and you're an upcoming player, or even further before that, when we had like Leon Hoyos coming up as a young and strong player, this is not a federation that has the capacity of supporting that. This doesn't. They don't have the capacity of saying like, oh, let's get you a trainer, let's get you resources, let's go bring you to tournaments so you can get good. You have to do it all on your own. And I mean, when you have a federation that can't even properly buy tickets to the Olympiad, and I'm not, in this particular case, I'm not singling out Mexico. So many federations where like the reality is that people go to the Olympiad 1 week before without tickets, 1 week before not really knowing if they're going. And it's great that some federations are very well organized. Some federations are very professional. Some federations actually pay their players, but it's not always like that.
It's very widespread. Besides the really big chess countries like United States, Russia, China. I mean, you don't really get federations that are able to give much money to their players. I don't think it's like limited to a few countries. It's actually more
I would say
the rule than the exception.
Exactly, I would say that, and it's something that's been changing gradually. It's something that FIDE does better now. I know that FIDE pays for a lot of the low-income type of federations to attend the Olympiad. It's beneficial for everybody. But that was a fund that didn't exist not that long ago. It's a fund that prevented a lot of teams from reaching the Olympiad, which is in many ways one of the few avenues that these federations have to meet grandmasters, meet resources, meet new people, see how the world of chess actually works.
That's very interesting because I hear you not necessarily complain, but we used to complain about the Romanian Chess Federation. But now that you're telling me about how Costa Rican Federation used to operate, I mean, I was lucky because in the Romanian Chess Federation, if you were winning the national championship, national junior championship, you at least were getting one tournament paid, either the World Youth or the European Youth. And then I also had some other sponsors. I had the club that I was playing for throughout the year, and that kind of helped me play both World Youth and European Youth because I was winning those youth competitions quite easily. Were you even playing those youth competitions? Because I would assume the competition wasn't that.
No, as I said, I played 2002 and that was it.
No, the national ones. Were you playing national ones?
I mean, I became under 20 champion when I was 9.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of... No, I actually didn't even play the national championship because it made no sense.
Yeah.
At some point, for a few years, when I was still Costa Rican Federation, they rewrote the ways that you can qualify for the Olympic team. They were like, in the top 4 players of the national championship qualify for the Olympic team, plus Grandmaster Alejandro Ramir. That was the rules. That was the rules of the federation. Because it made no sense for me to like fly back and play the national championship for like 2 weeks against an average rating of like 2150. You know, there'll be a few IMs which are strong and I still have to beat, but the rest of the tournament is just like donating rating.
How many grandmasters does Costa Rica have right now?
We currently have one. Bernal Gonzalez got his grandmaster title after I switched federations, so they regained their 1 GM. And that's the only grandmaster in Central America currently.
Wow.
Actually, I think it's the only norm.
That's amazing. Wow.
I think people think it's amazing because they don't know how most of the world works. Like, in America, you see a GM, it's like, whatever, you know? I don't even know this guy. Yeah. But you go to certain areas and it's difficult. It's just, people first underestimate how difficult it is to be GM. Second, there's no like school of chess. Third, there's nobody telling you, oh, this is the mistakes I made. You shouldn't make this mistake. You should do this. Or like how to plan tournaments, where to go to tournaments. I mean, you're a grandmaster norm seeker in Costa Rica. Where is your closest norm? Oh, it's not so easy anymore now. Like, well, now I have to fly. Now there's considerations of visa. Where am I going to stay? Where's the hotel? Like, there's so many more aspects to it than, oh, you know, it's July. How about we drive to Philadelphia for the World Open? And I'm bound to play a GM, right?
Yeah, this has traditionally been an issue for, let's say, young players trying to get norms. Because not only do you have to play well, like you have to get a certain performance rating, and if you're a good player, then you can get that. But you have to play certain people from a certain amount of countries, a certain amount of GMs, and if you don't have those resources, then your only option is either to become like a 2550 FM or IM, or to travel somewhere.
And even to get to 2550, I mean, it's also about who you play. And you don't get better by playing 2200s all the time. You have to actually face competition that's higher than you. And that is expensive.
But now with all the online resources, maybe that's a bit different. People can get really strong, kids can get really strong playing online.
It's gotten much better. There's resources. I mean, things like Chessable didn't exist. Even Skype lessons didn't exist back then. All we had was ICC and like text message based ICC, right?
Yeah.
Like no voice, no nothing. So it's gotten better. I mean, I also think that I got strong because of ICC. Like, I am telling you all this story that I lived in Costa Rica. I didn't play GMs. I mean, the only practice I got was logging online and hoping that I got 3,000 blitz so that I could actually play strong players.
Once Gata alluded to something similar, which not that he got stronger because he was like got to be a top player before the days of that, but that he helped a lot of American players, specifically like let's say Hikaru, who was up and coming at the time that Gata was super strong, become better by giving practice against a top player. And I don't know if I necessarily agree that Nakamura wouldn't still become a top player whether he was playing Gata or not, but it helps to get that experience against really good players.
I think it's necessary. I mean, look at all these grandmasters that come up. And like, how do they get good? They get good by losing to the good players first. I mean, you have to learn how it works at the top. You needed that feeling of like, oh, this is completely different than what I thought chess was. I mean, if you compare the strength of a 2200 and 2500, it's so vast. The difference is so vast that if you consistently play a 2500, you're eventually going, like, almost by osmosis, going to like learn something from these games, even if it's just how to handle yourself on the board. So yeah, it was a difficulty. It's gotten better because of the internet, but still nothing like practice.
And you understood those difficulties early on, right? And you were bound to seek opportunities somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then you found the United States. How did that came about?
Well, I wouldn't jump it like that. I would say that for a few years, my family and we fought that struggle. We fought that idea that, well, we have some sponsorship. Where can we go? My mom was a wizard about finding tournaments wherever she could. We traveled everywhere. I mean, I traveled to Europe. I traveled to Mexico, to Cuba, to wherever Latin America had a tournament. I had a visa, so the few times I could go to America for a worthy event, I tried to go. Back then, chess scene in America was a lot more barren than it is nowadays. But I still traveled as much as I could. I would go to like, I wouldn't miss like the Aeroflot Open. And the Aeroflot Open, it's really hard to get to when you're in America. You go to New York, and New York you go to Moscow. It's still a very long flight. When you're in Costa Rica, you do San Jose, Venezuela, Italy, and from Italy you grab a flight to Moscow, and it takes about 40 hours.
What about like going through Cuba? Was that a possibility?
It was just as long.
Just as long.
Yeah, it was just as long, or it was more money or whatever. It didn't really matter. Like when I went to Libya for the World Championship, it's like a 50-hour trip.
That was in 2004, right?
2004, right? So eventually, I came to America not so much for chess opportunities. I was already established GM. I wanted something different. I wanted to experience something new. I wanted to see what school life was like. I sat down with my parents and we talked about it. And we decided that, yeah, maybe I should go to college just to experience it and see how it goes. I have to say that originally we wanted me to go to Costa Rica University, but unfortunately in Costa Rica, there's no such thing as homeschooled. And this homeschool, let's put it, was a strong word for what I was doing. But they don't have no problem in America. They gave a bunch of SATs, the TOEFL, they had some interviews, and more than one university gave me an offer of a scholarship.
Did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you, the universities?
It was a little bit of both, because I was already interested, but I had a couple of friends that went to UTD. So back then, Daniel Fernandez, which I knew from Florida, went to UTD, so he kind of hooked me up with
and
the people there.
And I think the collegiate chess scene started like, what, 98? Was that the first year?
I mean, something like that. I was not so far from one of the first generations. I wasn't the first generation, but I was like the second or third generation of actual collegiate chess players on sponsorship. And back then, there were only two universities, University of Texas at Dallas and University of Maryland at Baltimore County, UMBC. But that was it. We didn't have the explosion of collegiate chess that we have right now.
And how old were you when you went to university?
I just turned 17 when
you were pretty young.
I was pretty young, yeah. I mean, I guess I was kind of done with my chess career by that point. I didn't want to play. Hi, this is Soy. I didn't want to play. I felt it was very stressful. I felt that I was limiting my opportunities, and I felt I wasn't learning a lot of things.
At 17, you already felt like your career was over.
I didn't feel like my career was over. I felt like I could continue if I wanted. Like, I definitely thought I was strong enough and I had the opportunities. But I had, especially, I remember being in an Aeroflot, surrounded by all these like really smart people and thinking like, can't everybody do something better for like the world? And I was kind of disillusioned by chess for a little bit, but I came around to it. I mean, I think that I burned myself out. I played consistently. I traveled consistently. My social life was literally logging on ICC and talking to my chess friends. And I think we all experience that at some point where like you don't have any friends except for computer usernames and screens that you see maybe twice a year.
What was your rating at that point, sir?
No, it's I think we all have that sentiment at some point as chess players. Like we're studying this incredibly complex game, but it is an essentially futile endeavor where we're trying to improve our chess and maybe trying to discover some new things in chess, but it is still a board game, and yeah, I think a lot of people. I even heard this like a long time ago when I was a kid. There was this chess sponsor in New York named Stanley Druckenmiller, who was very interested in chess, and when my father told him that we're going to pursue chess full time, or at least think about that, he was like, why? He could do so many better things with his life than chess. And at some point you have that thought when you're like growing up and you're like, do I still want to do chess? Like I'm really good at it, but maybe I could be more useful to the world in another area.
And what did you study at the university?
Okay, that's funny because with all this segue saying that I have a master's degree in video game design doesn't sound like the best. But I actually started as physics. Not a lot of people know this, but I started working at a nanotechnology lab. It was the first thing that drew me to UTD. A lot of my friends worked in the lab as well. Yeah, the whole thing, like the whole physics. And at some point, I kind of liked the art degree better. It was a very nice program they had at UTD called Arts and Technology. Brand new, experimental kind of, where they taught you how to make video games. And I did a lot of that. I did that for, the entirety of my bachelor's and master's. I worked for a very big company, which was one of my goals, to have my name on the credit of a game that sold at least 10 million copies. And I did that. So,
which game was it?
Diablo 3. So I worked for Blizzard for a little bit. I did a lot of work on educational games in Dallas and in UTD. So I did dabble on it for quite a bit. But yeah, it put a big stop in the chess career because I wasn't so dedicated. I did play chess, but it's not the same. You're in school, you play here once in a while. Yeah. I mean, some of the tournaments are like party tournaments, and I wasn't taking it very seriously.
I think that like some other players, they enter that college life, like very talented players, and then they are at a crossroads even when they're in that. Like I remember Wesley went to university at some point, and people thought that he would, stop playing professional chess because now he's getting a degree or whatever. But then at some point he made the decision to get back into professional chess. So did you also have that moment when you were in university, like maybe I want to get back into professional chess?
Absolutely, but for me, it was an actual choice. I feel like for a lot of people that go to college in one of these chess colleges, for some they do have this opportunity where they have two very strong options. And for some, I think that they go to college, but once they finish college, their realistic only option is to go back to chess. It is what it is. I had a real choice, but I really had to decide. And it came around like 2012, 13, something like that, where I started applying to a lot of jobs that I wanted, but the industry, let me put it, the gaming industry back then and since then, it's tough. It's a lot of hours. It's not a lot of freedom. You really have to love your job, which I did, but it's just your job. I mean, you're going to be expected to work crunch time. You're going to be expected to work for unrealistic hour expectations. It's just the way it works. And I like my freedom. I like travel. Chess was coming up in America because of the St. Louis Chess Club. So it became like a real alternative. When I was graduating with my bachelor's in 2009, the Chess Club of St. Louis was just starting. Like, we didn't know if it was going to be big, if it was going to be small. We didn't have no idea. But besides that, it was clear that American chess was going nowhere.
It's still like a huge leap of faith, right? To just accept the fact that you're going to be a chess professional when you do have the options of working for a company like Blizzard, right?
Yeah, I never saw it like that. I mean, I understand that it is at the end of the day, but I also felt that you have to do one or the other. Like, I couldn't really balance both. So, it was a decision that I wouldn't say it was made for me, but it just had to be done. And one was, at that point, so much more appealing than the other.
How are you making your money at that point once you got out of college? Did you start teaching? Did you start traveling and playing tournaments? How are you making your money?
I taught a lot. Actually, that's not true. I taught a little bit, but I wore a lot of hats in the chess world, especially back then. First of all, I was a pretty successful chess player. Even though I wasn't so strong, I feel that there are players that are even stronger than me that never win tournaments. Like, you'll be like 2600, but what have you ever won? And they can't give you an answer, like they've never won a single tournament. And that translates to money. Whereas I was a very inconsistent player, but through the inconsistency, I had some great tournaments. Like, I tied for first at World Open, I got second at the US Championship 2013, I won the US Open once, I got second the next year. That's, like 10 grand here, 8 grand here, 7 grand there. So,
we referenced that U.S. Championship where you played God in the final. In
That's
the
right, yeah.
previous episode, right? We talked about that.
I think
at some
so,
point.
yeah.
Because we were talking about bidding
Oh, yes.
on Armageddon games, and you played an Armageddon against God in that tournament, right?
yeah, that was terrible. The way that worked, you probably covered it last time, but we had a 45-minute time control, and you can bid down to get the color you wanted. I don't think the organizers realized that 45 minutes is like ridiculous, and that if you wanted to bid for your color, it wasn't easy. And I had a tough choice.
How much did you bid?
I bid 19 minutes and 45 seconds, which beat his bid of 20 minutes.
His bid was 20 minutes.
That's what I heard. I don't remember the exact, but I think it was something
That's
like
so
that.
risky. I mean, both of your bids. And my feeling is that
thing
that's
is-
very little time.
The thing is, I really wanted to be black because I had been surviving against Gata so far. Like in the 2013 championship, I pulled a miracle and survived with black in the standard time controls. And then when we came to the rapid playoffs, I survived with white, I survived with black, but definitely wasn't putting any pressure. And I was thinking, well, maybe I can survive one more time, but I'm definitely not beating this guy. I mean, his black version of the Spanish was way too solid for me to do anything. So I was like, okay, I'll take 1945 with black, I'll take my chances. But I got a bad position from the opening and didn't recover.
You said that was in 2008?
13.
Oh, sorry, in 13. So Gata had just 3 years ago played a World Championship qualifier against Apollo. So he still had the openings of a top player
Yes.
in every sense. Like, he was 2770 at that time, right? Or
I think it was like just above 2700. I think that he had like a bad period and then he bounced back.
Okay, so that was near the end of the year. Yeah.
I really don't remember.
Because I played him, and I remember him being around like high 2700s. He was still
He might
playing,
have
like
been-
Grand Prix and all these top events.
He might have been 2740, 2750. I don't know. This was so long ago that
Yeah.
I remember him. Like Morozevich said at one point, I don't have a rating, I have a name. I don't remember what his rating was. I was playing Kamsky. Kamsky's Kamsky.
Gata had another version of saying that. He said, "I'm a famous
Something legend.
something legend."
I was playing. I was playing one of those. Yes.
Yeah.
That's actually how I remember Alejandro. You were mentioning winning tournaments, and that's how I remember meeting you. I came to the University of Texas at Dallas 2010, and I met you. I saw you coming. I saw this like cocky walk of this young guy, and I asked the coach, "Who's that guy?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's Alejandro Ramirez. He's a grandmaster. He just won the U.S. Open." And of course, you were like shit talking everybody at the chess room and playing bullet, playing blitz, and things of that nature. It was a funny time at the university for sure. Now, as we enter your later stage of your life, I do want to watch something with you, and we were discussing sponsors as well. At one point, you had is it a salsa
So it's-
commercial? You started.
It's kind of a cooking sauce.
Oh, there we go.
Vivir solo en tierras tan lejanas me hace extrañar más a mi país, a esa Costa Rica que he representado tantas veces y con tanto orgullo. El ajedrez cambió mi vida, pero nunca logrará cambiar mis raíces. Mira
That's
esos
you?
momentos
How old were you
inolvidables
at this point?
It must have
Por
been
eso,
like
mi mamá
18 or
siempre me
19,
trae
something like
salsa
that. I
Lizano.
think this was my sophomore
Y yo la
year,
llevo
maybe
conmigo
junior
a
year
donde
of
quiera que
college.
voy.
Salsa
Yeah,
Lizano.
not too much.
Durante 85 años, el sabor de Costa Rica.
All right.
Salsa Lizano, and I do believe that we do have the Salsa Lizano.
We
with
do
us.
have a bottle with us here.
Fabi, whip up the.
Just
the
whip it
sauce.
out.
Yeah.
So here's the salsa,
They're not sponsoring us. Nobody is sponsoring
But they
us.
should.
but salsa Lizano if you're out there.
Fabi, you want to try it?
Um,
Come on. Try
well,
it.
I think I might need
A spoon.
A
We
spoon.
need
a spoon.
Can we get a spoon? So this is your last bottle of salsa Lizano? Can
Well,
you
for now,
find
but-
this in the United States?
Yeah, you can just go to Amazon.com and buy
Ah,
it.
there we go. All right.
There's so much
Thank
commercial
you.
for this.
All right. I'm not gonna feed you the sauce. you feed yourself.
This is. Don't
Let's
put your
see.
hand under it.
I just don't want to spill on the couch.
Oh, it's a rather thick sauce.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
There it goes.
There we go.
All right. Here you go.
I'll get it.
I've never tried this before.
It's incredible. I use it for cooking very often.
Pretty good.
Well, thank you.
I like it.
Out of 10?
Very
10 out
nice.
of 10. Wow.
Very nice. It is what it is.
It'll be difficult to beat that. All right. Well,
So,
how did that came about? How did you
All right, so
got approached?
I mean, I'll be kind of honest. When I made my GM title, it was kind of unexpected in Costa Rica, and I got a lot of media attention, like a lot. I was named Sportsman of the Year of 2003. So I was pretty famous. I mean, I was like really famous. People would recognize me on the streets. People would stop me to take pictures or autographs or whatever, even if I was just randomly walking down the street of Costa Rica. And after I went to college, I think Salsa Lizano had this like series of commercials where they shot a commercial with like famous Costa Ricans that live abroad. Like I think Maribel Guardia did one. Like a lot of famous Costa Ricans, like Costa Rican soccer players that lived in Europe, would do a few. So I got to do one. They contacted me. I had to go back home for it, but it was totally worth it. It was a fun experience. It was my first time in front of a camera. That little soundbite of 30 seconds took like 6 hours to record. They're like, oh, more emotion, less emotion, too much, too slow. I mean, but it was a lot of fun. They pay pretty well. And to be honest, I use it all the time. Like before you could find it on Amazon, I would actually come back with like 3 bottles from home because I use it pretty often for my own cooking.
Were you actually cooking in that commercial, or was that just a photo shoot?
It was just a photo shoot. Somebody actually cooked the chicken, which was really weird. They took it from the oven and then they put it in the frying pan. And then they were like, yeah, just pretend that you're... I was like, okay.
I had a similar experience when, not on a professional level, but we were in doing the chess.com commentary for the World Championship match, and they wanted me to cook for a bit. And I was like, okay, I'll cook some eggs. But there was like no cooking equipment. There was no oil. The pan was not non-stick, and so we like put a few eggs in, and they kept sticking to the pan, and we couldn't figure out the stove because it was like a stove of an Airbnb. And then Danny like butts in there and starts scraping the eggs off the pan, and he keeps adding eggs to it because we wanted to do multiple takes. So at some point we had like six eggs frying in this pan. It was the worst food that I've ever.
That was actually delicious. Like, it was actually good because they had me like eat at the end. It was actually good.
Because it was a professional
It
chef.
was a professional chef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no professional chef with Chess.com, yeah?
Danny Wrench was our
Danny.
professional chef.
Danny
I
is
can
a pro.
imagine. Excellent. Well, let's get closer to our time. So, very recently, you became sort of famous because you got this interview of Hans Niemann,
Yeah.
and you actually made it on Elon Musk's Twitter. Did you see that?
Yeah, I got it sent. I mean, I heard it was deleted since,
Yeah, it was.
but it was nice to have that 5 minutes of glory. I like to think that I'm famous for other things, but but we will leave it at that. No, of course. I mean, that was a big deal, and it's strange, right? Like it's strange how chess sometimes is at the center of certain storms that you didn't imagine coming.
So when Hans got on that day to do an interview, did you have any idea what was going to happen beforehand?
I mean, I guess we should start talking about the Singfield Cup because we're gonna get there eventually. Let me start with like how Hans got there, because I think a lot of people gave flack to the St. Louis Chess Club for inviting Hans, despite quote unquote everyone knowing that he cheated. And that's not an easy thing to say. I mean, first of all, these rumors sometimes sometimes dictate how chess operates. Like you hear something, you hear of something, and you're expected to know it. And I think that is a very bad view. I mean, when we had a list of players that we wanted to invite for the Sinkfield Cup and St. Louis Rapid and Blitz once Richard quit. Why he quit, we don't care. It's not part of the conversation. We just had two vacancies suddenly, and we had maybe like a week and a half to fill them up. It wasn't very long, and they gave me a list of players, and it's like all 5 looked fine, but for a very long time I had wanted to give Hans an opportunity. I had, of course, heard that he had cheated online. I mean, I'm very well connected, or at least like to think that I'm well connected in the chess world, and I had heard of that, and I had heard allegations that he had cheated over the board. I mean, the only issue that I had with it, and a very big issue, is that I've heard of this from so many people. So many people that have been accused of cheating online, so many people that have been accused of cheating over the board. Some, and many I would say, especially cheating online, fully justified. Like, obviously they cheated, they've gotten caught, they've gotten banned. But especially when it comes to over the board, I've heard of so many people cheating. And some of them are like complete nonsense. So some of the allegations are complete nonsense. And if you want the St. Louis Chess Club to sit with a magnifying glass and look at every single talented individual that's coming up and being like, hey, you know, what are the centipone losses on this guy's 20 last games? We're not going to do that. I mean, he is clearly a very dedicated player. At that point, there was no real indication that he has cheated online. Even to this day, we don't have any proof or anything like that. And we can't work on allegations.
So just to clarify, once Rapport withdrew from the tournament and from the tour, the St. Louis Chess Club gave you the choice of different players, or gave you the...
That is not the case. They gave me a list of 5 players, and they said, what do you think about inviting them? Like, what is your opinion? Is there any problem? Like, for example, is one of them in Russia, or is one of them playing a tournament in the middle of nowhere that he can't get back, which actually was the case for one of the players. You know, we need to move quickly. Who can we invite? Who's available? And so, kind of as a chess expert in the chess club, they asked my opinion, which one of these 5 would be possible. I didn't invite them directly, I simply gave my recommendations.
And despite some reservations based on these very thin at the time allegations that Hans cheated, either online or over the board, you decided that Hans would be an interesting choice for the tournament.
I think Hans would be a great choice for the tournament. There were a lot of reasons that I thought that at the time. And again, even though only a month has passed since that exact moment, a lot has changed, especially on the way that people view Hans right now. People are viewing Hans with a magnifying glass, and perhaps it is natural for us right now to think of Hans as somebody that everybody's looking at. But back then, Hans was just one of many talented players that is coming up the ranks. Everybody's kind of really focused on the Uzbeks and the Indians because these are the guys that are just either won the Olympiad or almost won the Olympiad. And nobody has really sat down and thought, okay, is Hans cheating or not? Nobody has really said that at this point. People are rumoring it, but when I got asked, what is Hans okay for an invite? He just finished the FTX Cup in Miami, where I didn't see any indication of him cheating.
He got killed, yeah.
He didn't really get killed, and I thought that was even the more interesting part, is that even though he lost every single match,
Narrowly. It was
exactly,
narrow,
he lost all of them narrowly. So I thought, okay, this is an interesting player. He can take games off of good people. His interviews are clearly very candid and very interesting, so at the very least we'll get that. I didn't imagine the extent of it. But at that point, he seemed like a fun and interesting player to bring up. Yes, of course, I had heard that he cheated, but
that was not public knowledge, and nobody knew for sure that he cheated. Since then, he acknowledged the cheating online, but he didn't acknowledge before that.
Just rumors.
Allegations.
They were just rumors. They were allegations. They were pretty strong. I mean, some of them linked me to accounts of his that had been banned.
Yeah.
And yeah, I understand that, but nobody at that point had any clarity or any strong evidence that Hans had cheated over the board. At this point, this did not exist. This was not a talking point. This was something that, you know, people rumored.
Actually, I had this thought at some point recently. Like, obviously a lot changed. But in terms of what we actually know, the facts, what changed between Hans pre-Sinkfield Cup, post-FTX Crypto Cup, and now? I mean, everything all of that we're basing this on is just Magnus withdrawing from the tournament and the implications that comes with. but we have no extra evidence that he cheated over the board.
Well, we now have a mountain of circumstantial evidence that's been compiled by Redditor statisticians. And even if they're not on Reddit, they're very close to that, where they just publish something on YouTube, and then the entirety of the chess world tries to dissect it. You know, how many centipawns did this guy lose? How many graphs can we compile?
On this podcast, we would never do something like circumstantial
Guilty as charged,
analysis
guys.
of random games. I mean, we would never do that.
So, I mean, but that also opens a question that I don't know if you guys have talked about. How much evidence is enough evidence? Like, short of catching somebody red-handed, how will we ever know if somebody cheated?
Well, we did bring this up. And I think Hikaru also commented on this video. It was one of our live videos.
Yeah.
Or I think it was when we were speaking to Maurice, and he was saying, well, what's the evidence? And we said, yeah, but what is the threshold of evidence that you're willing to accept? Because it's obviously all circumstantial, but
that's accepted in a lot of
that can
laws.
also be evidence of something, yeah, even if it's circumstantial. But the other thing is could it even be viewed as circumstantial evidence? Like, does it even fit that description? Like, some of it is just people pulling out random moves from random games and using tools that nobody even understands, like a chess-based analysis tool.
Let me re-emphasize what you said. Nobody understands this.
Yeah.
Like, when I talk about potential of cheating and I see a game where I suspect somebody of cheating, you have to understand there's a very select few amount of people in the chess world that actually understand why this looks unnatural, why this doesn't make sense, why these numbers don't add up. And I'm not talking about Hans here, I'm talking about any case where people look at a graph and they're like, this guy's a cheater. And I'm like, do you even know what this graph says? Did you know what a centipawn loss was before, like, you knew the name Hans Niemann? Like, how often does a centipawn loss happen? How often does Capablanca did it compared to Tal? Like, people that can't answer that are certainly, like, condemning people online.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but let's say ignoring the opinions of people who don't have much authority or knowledge in the matter, there are some people who also have a lot of authority and knowledge in the matter who are weighing in and who think that we're seeing something weird here.
But there are also authorities, or so-called authorities in the chess world, that based on my knowledge and based on my understanding of chess engines and based on my understanding of games and the people that I know in the chess world, this authority's opinion is garbage. Like, it's just...
You were talking about Ken Reagan?
I mean, I don't think that Ken Reagan's is absolute garbage, but it doesn't strike me as an algorithm that is impossible to fool. Like, we were talking about this the other day, like, a very big difference between a statistician that's trying to find some data compared to a statistician that's trying to find a cheater is that a cheater's trying to hide.
Yeah.
They know that there is something going after them and they're trying to hide. You're not gonna, if you're good at it, you're not gonna be able to see the trail because there won't be a trail. There'll be a...
Because someone scraped the trail and now there's nothing there.
Or you, if let's say like you cheat randomly. Let's say that somebody doesn't even cheat consistently. Let's say somebody cheats once every 3 tournaments, just to boost their performance once in a while.
And even in those 1 and 3 tournaments, they do it in a way which is a little bit random.
A little bit random, you know, here and there enough to win the game.
But this is the discussion about Hans, right? Because he
Well-
was just leveling up in terms of his performance and then picking.
Sure,
Leveling up, picking.
But again, with
Leveling up,
Hans,
picking.
everybody has found some kind of trail.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like a new player. New player, strong player, upcoming, doesn't even have to be upcoming actually. Just wants to boost their rating by 50 or 100 points. Cheats here and there. How are you never going to
Or
catch
in
this
an
person?
important tournament,
Or-
so they
yeah.
can get a big cash prize.
A big cash prize at the right time they cheat. You're not going to catch that.
Yeah. Well, I think so. A lot of people have said that we've been very harsh on Reagan as let's say the analyst that FIDE goes to and his model. Like I don't want to be too harsh on it, but it does feel like it can be tricked.
I think that anybody that works in programming and works in algorithms know that every algorithm has a failure. Every algorithm that if you know it, you can game it somehow.
On the other hand, we don't want to have a false positive.
Yeah, of course, false positives are so incredibly destructive, right? That you gotta err on the side of this guy's innocent. But I mean, if you accuse somebody of cheating and it's a false positive with an algorithm, I mean, that's just, what can you do, right? Like, what would be the possibilities for the player at that point?
Yeah.
So
the player is screwed. I mean, they can maybe take it to court and try to argue their case, but who knows if
Good
they'll-
luck. Yeah, you're destroyed. I mean, like even if Hans, like for example, let's say Hans is innocent, doesn't matter, right? Like his career is.
His career is pretty much over at this
I,
point.
I don't know if it's over,
It feels like that.
but it's
right?
like
I
it's so
wouldn't go that
difficult. I wouldn't
far.
go that far.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's ruined or anything like that. But it's been harmed. This are
Well, as an organizer, who are you going to invite? Magnus or Hans? Because Magnus is not going to play against Hans anymore.
But this is not the argument, right? This is not the argument because let's face it. Even though they did play the Singfield Cup, they still play different tournaments.
Yeah.
It's not gonna come down to that. What it's gonna come down to is like, where is Hans gonna get his opportunities?
But
like-
they play different tournaments for the moment, right? If Hans goes to 2750,
Yeah.
he's going to start playing the same tournaments as Magnus.
Well, they
as
still
Fabiano.
do play some of the same tournaments because
Yeah.
there are all these online tournaments that they could play together. For example, the Chess 24 events, the FTX Crypto Cup, this one, that one. They played in one recently where Magnus won the event, but he didn't play against Hans. He played a move and then resigned, and obviously caused some extra uproar over that decision. So they, even though they are different levels and they might play different tournaments, they are playing some tournaments, and there is a question like, if I'm the organizer of, let's say, Vaikenze, and I know that if I invite both of them, then I'm going to have my tournament covered in scandal because there's going to be a forfeited game. So I have a choice between the world champion and this relative newcomer who's 2700, right?
Yeah, it's just not pretty. It's just not pretty, right? And so far, we don't have any, like, as we are doing this podcast, it's perfectly possible that one of the listeners is saying, like, yeah, I've seen enough evidence. Hans is a cheater in my views. I don't care that, we don't have anything solid. And that's fine. But organizers can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something solid or there's not something solid. At that point, we're excluding a player that we haven't yet found something solid against.
But there was something solid. He cheated online.
Then,
There was precedent.
Then we have another conversation.
There was precedent. And
Precedent.
that's a big
Relevant.
one, I think.
That is relevant.
It
But-
is, of course, it is relevant, but we can't use online cheating to decline invitations, even if it's only for the practical reason that there are so many people that did it at this point.
Some people are arguing that we should take into account online just as over the board.
But then they have to be exposed by, let's say, the website that banned them.
Yeah.
And then you get into legal issues, right?
Correct.
I mean,
Potentially.
we have legal issues. We have like, what is the burden of proof? Certain websites will have different burden of proof. For example, like I can't imagine that the Lee Chess algorithm is the exact same one as chess.com.
Totally different.
So
Yeah.
if they're totally different, then why can this one say it's a cheater, the other one says I'm not? I mean, we have so many problems on that issue, right? And not to mention that, what are we going to do with all the people that already cheated? Are we never going to invite them to tournaments again? Do they give it a 2-year ban? Who decides the ban? Is FIDE going to take over this? I mean, there's so many questions. It's like a Pandora box opening of questions of what to do with people cheating online. That, I mean, you need like 3 or 4 more podcasts just to talk about it.
Well, before the Magnus Hans scandal, we had a relatively simple and easy solution to that, which was that the chess websites, because they have full authority over what happens on their website, they're free to ban whoever, and it doesn't go out, the knowledge doesn't really permeate outside of the chess website.
Yeah.
And they allow the players a avenue to redemption, right? As we've seen chess.com has done. But it doesn't ever influence their over-the-board career. Like, just because you cheated on chess.com doesn't mean that you don't get invited to the Grand Prix or Grand Swiss or whatever tournament it is.
Or the Singfield.
But now, because of the Magnus Hans scandal, drama, whatever you want to call it, it's suddenly opened all these questions. Like, what do you do now that we have knowledge about players cheating online? Because it's hard to imagine this knowledge of certain players cheating would stay hidden forever because things tend to get out there. But now we actually have to deal with this dilemma.
It's not an easy dilemma because I think that a lot of people know some of the known cheaters, but there's a lot of people that we never figured out. Like, there's a lot of people, as you mentioned, that had a path to redemption, right? Like, let's say that a cheater that got banned on chess.com that we all know, ex-player, whatever, happened 2 years ago. And another player, Y, did the same thing, but handled it quietly. Now they're going to face different punishments because we know of one, but not the other.
Well, that's the moral dilemma. Why is Hans the one who got exposed, but XX player who's 2700, the same exact situation, also cheated online and was caught? Why is that person going under the radar? That's the ethical dilemma we have now.
It almost feels like it's an unfortunate evil. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the way the whole Hans thing has developed, in the sense that it felt that because things couldn't be said, because lawyers would suddenly get involved, that everything was done with hearsay or with veiled threats or with veiled accusations or with tantrums. And yeah, maybe this was the only way, because chess players have been asking organizers to take this more seriously. Chess players have been asking everyone from FIDE to the St. Louis Chess Club to everyone to take serious measures, to take the 15-minute or 30-minute delay in a broadcast, because we're just waiting to be exploited. And perhaps this needed to end at some point. And perhaps this is the beginning of the end of that. I don't know how, but just by bringing it into the limelight.
Well, at least at the club, I think we're moving forward. We're going to do delay.
And I think
continuously.
I can't imagine that any serious tournament
Yeah.
won't use delay
Yeah.
from now on.
Well, besides open tournaments where it might be very difficult because of the amount of players and let's say if you have spectators too, that's an additional worry. Like, not all tournaments have the privilege that the St. Louis Chess Club has, where you can put everyone in a closed room and nobody can go in, and the delay can be put in place so nobody has access to the moves or the games.
But that's not sustainable also, and I don't think it's going to be going forward. We don't have spectators at the St. Louis Chess Club right now because we're just doing renovation. But moving forward, I think we expect to receive spectators.
Well, we spoke about
it's not
this, right? We said that the spectators would have to check in their electronic devices just like
Yeah.
you would at any other sort of show, right? So you don't record things, or
Yeah.
we see this.
I'm sure that we'll think of things. I think there's a lot of details that we haven't even thought about that will eventually have to be thought and planned out. But it's a start. It's a start that we take this more seriously. It's a start that, there's a lot of tournaments where it's very easy to cheat. And we kind of trust the players and the coaches or whatever, the staff, not to do it. And at some point, I think that's going to evaporate. That this trust has been broken. And we need to realize that, we can't trust the players anymore.
I
So-
think that moment is pretty much now. Go ahead, Fabio.
Is this like so? I think it's a good consequence that at least the cheating problem is on organizers' radar, and it kind of was on their radar, but now they really have to take it seriously, which
Yeah.
we didn't see in the past, right? With some behind the doors complaints, and organizers were like, there's not really much there, and the public perception is what really matters.